Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Chris Seiter, and today we're going to be talking about why X's seem to come back after the no contact rule. Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I can't wait to dive into it with you today. But first things first, before you ever should do anything, the first question you always need to ask yourself is, do I have a chance of getting my X back? Now, if you're a little confused or you have no clue, don't worry, I have your back. On my website, www.xboyfriendrecovery.com, I've actually put together a special quiz designed to answer this exact question for you. All you have to do is simply look in the description below this YouTube video, click on the link that you see there. It will take you directly to the quiz, answer the questions that you see there as honestly as possible, and we're going to run your answers through an advanced algorithm and spit out an answer for you so you actually have an idea of what you should be doing. Now, in addition to the quiz, one new thing that we're trying out is actually giving everyone who takes the quiz will get an opportunity to ask me a question through email, and you're going to get an opportunity to sign up for a free on-demand group coaching session that will basically teach you what to do from start to finish in case you're a little unclear on what you should be doing. So again, if you want all of those cool things, all you have to do is simply look in the description below this YouTube video, click on the link that you see there. It should say something like take the 2-minute free quiz or something like that, and you should be good to go. All right. Let's begin.
All right, so why do X's come back after the no contact rule? It's an interesting question and something I cannot wait to get into talking about with you guys today. So ultimately, the thing that we're trying to uncover here are the roots of why the no contact rule works. Because after all, that's sort of what makes people come back after the no contact rule, of the benefits that you get from it, and also the psychological research that basically says that it works. So we're going to be talking about some advanced stuff, things that I've never talked about before and I don't see anyone else talking about. This is going to go well beyond like, oh yeah, you do the no contact rule, your ex will miss you. This goes well beyond that. This is very advanced. So before I get started, I just do want to reiterate, if you haven't already taken our X Recovery Chances quiz, that free 2-minute quiz below in the description link, I would highly recommend that you do that. The quiz will not only tell you what kind of chance you have of getting your X back, it'll also give you the opportunity to ask me a couple of questions, and I'm going to push you towards signing up on a free group coaching that's about, I think, a 2.5-hour training lesson on how you're supposed to get your X back from start to finish, and the whole thing's free. So it's sort of a really good thing for you guys to do if you are interested in getting your X back, right? So I always recommend everyone do that first before they start talking or looking at some of the advanced things that we're talking about, which we certainly are going to be talking about some advanced things today. Well, now with that out of the way, let's move on and start talking about why the no contact rule works and why X's come back after it. So the first thing I really want to talk about with regards to the no contact rule is this idea of a reactance. Now, if you haven't heard any of my lectures on reactance before, the cusp or the idea of it's pretty simple. In fact, you can actually make the case that it's the full explanation of why the no contact rule works in general. So reactance basically states that every human being is born with certain behavioral freedoms. I have the freedom to talk to who I want to talk to, just like you have the freedom to talk to who you want to talk to. We often take these behavioral freedoms for granted because they're so often not threatened. But when they do become threatened, when they do become taken away from us, we react. We respond in a way that often tries to reobtain that freedom. And that's what the no contact rule is. You're basically taking your ex's freedom to talk to you out of the equation and then watching as they react to that. And oftentimes they react in a way to try to get that freedom back. Now, I've talked about reactance before. That's nothing new. You can read articles I've written, watch videos I've filmed. Reactance is something I've talked about a lot. What I haven't talked about a lot is what's called the information gap theory. Now, the information gap theory sounds simple, but actually when you actually look at what encompasses, it can become quite complicated to fully grasp. So what I've done is I've done all the hard work for you and kind of find a way to look at the aspects of it that are important for our purposes to understand and just focus on that. So what is the information gap theory? Well, basically what it says is when something changes from being a known state to an unknown state, we become more curious. And the perfect example I can think to actually iterate this point is the Hot Wheels mystery box. Now, if you don't know, the Hot Wheels are little small cars that you often give to children to play. And if you're anything like me, when I grew up, I went to the grocery store and they had kind of the kids section where you can buy all the toys and all of the, I guess, kids stuff. And the Hot Wheels were always there, right? You could always buy the Hot Wheels. I'd beg my mom, I'd beg my dad to get me these Hot Wheels, and they never would. It was always the Hot Wheels mystery box that I would want. I mean, every once in a while, I could convince them to get me one. And the way it works is each Hot Wheels is kind of packaged so that you know what you're going to get. You know, okay, this Hot Wheel is a Mustang, or this Hot Wheel is a truck. You have that information. That's a known state. The unknown state, the information gap, was the Hot Wheels mystery box. It was that box of Hot Wheels that says you could get anything. You can get a super expensive car or a super cheap car. It's a mystery, right? There's a gap in your knowledge. Right, and so in a weird way, the no contact rule is exactly like a Hot Wheels mystery box. Your ex has certain assumptions that they're going to make about you after they go through a breakup, especially if they're the ones who broke up with you. They may sit there and think, oh yeah, he or she is going to be obsessed with me. They're going to be obsessed. And every time you talk to them, reach out to them, have a conversation with them, that almost feeds that assumption. Right? And then when you do the no contact rule, they're no longer having that assumption. That known entity that they thought they knew becomes an unknown entity. This creates curiosity. They want to know why. Right? Now, speaking of why, speaking of that unanswered question, that actually easily leads into another psychological concept called the Zeigarnik Effect. Now, I don't know if you know what's going on here, but look at the no contact rule and look at all of these psychological things that it does, right? All of the things that it has under its umbrella, right? We've got reactance, we've got the information gap theory, we even got the Zeigarnik Effect. Now, the Zeigarnik Effect, I don't even know if I pronounced that right. I will be the first to admit that pronunciation of Zeigarnik is very difficult for my brain to wrap around. I have no idea why. So the Zeigarnik Effect was actually founded by a woman named Bulma Zeigarnik. She basically posited that people remember uncompleted tasks better than completed ones. Pretty simple, right? And the example I always like to use is with Hollywood and TV shows, right? Hollywood TV show writers, think of your favorite TV shows excluding reality, right? TV shows that are dramas or what have you, understand that their life basically hinges on the fact of getting a viewer to watch episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth, right? And they do this by ending every episode on a cliffhanger, on an unanswered question, on something that makes you ask what happens next, right? It's an open loop. Now, human beings, we have this need to close loops. We remember uncompleted tasks better than completed ones. We're drawn more towards completing that task, right? That's why we continue to hook on and keep remembering to watch that next episode so you can find out what happens next, right? And this is kind of a fun psychological experience or experiment that you can do to actually prove that the Zeigarnik Effect really matters and it really stands out to people. Now, human beings, we have this need to control entropy. Entropy is basically saying that everything tends towards chaos, right? Ice, which I have like here, if I leave it long enough, will dissolve into water. Or water, if left long enough in a freezing surface, will turn into ice. Everything tends towards chaos if left alone long enough. Right now, human beings, we try to control chaos, but we're in this never-ending battle because there's no way to fully control entropy. In fact, the natural state of the universe is entropy, right? Everything tends towards it. There's no way around it. Now, the cool thing, here's the experiment I want you to try. Let's say that you live at home with your mom or dad, and you go to your front door, like my front door is literally out there. Leave it open and see what happens. Guaranteed, they will see that and they will close it. Why? It's an uncompleted task. Someone left that door open. That's the Zeigarnik Effect and work. And that's also the no contact rule, right? You've interrupted the pattern that's normal for your ex, right? You've gotten into this pattern of talking to your ex potentially every single day, and then all of a sudden out of the blue, stop talking to them. The pattern becomes interrupted. They want to know what happens next. Now, that's interesting, but perhaps the most interesting aspect of the no contact rule is the fact that it creates unpredictability. Now, unpredictability raises our perceived value, and this is kind of an interesting discussion we can have here on unpredictability, because human beings, we have these desires for these warring needs, these needs or wants that are at war with one another, right? We want predictability and stability in relationships. We do. We crave that, but we also crave unpredictability, mystery, adventurous, spontaneity. We want those things too. Now, those ideas could not be at farther ends of the spectrum, right? You've got people who want predictability, but at the same time, they want unpredictability. Those are two completely separate things. But one cannot exist without the other, because if you only get one thing, then it's going to go boring after a while. And that's what they've actually found. They found that brains actually kind of like unpredictability every once in a while, because the highs become higher than if we got the desired reward all of the time. If you always got everything that you wanted, you're going to be kind of mellow or bored with it. But if you have some insertion of unpredictability every once in a while, you start to actually appreciate that predictability a little bit more. And that's what the no contact rule can do. By enacting it, you actually create some unpredictability, and it allows you to create more investment. Think about this for a minute. Investment is an important thing to get in a relationship, because oftentimes that can be the deciding factor between commitment and not committing to someone. Commitment and friends with benefits, for example. Right? What's the difference? Well, the person, if they're with someone else, right, and sleeping with you on the side, they're not going to ever leave that person that they're with, because in their mind, they've invested too much. They've done studies and looked at different relationships and found that people who are extremely unsatisfied with their relationships will actually stay in that unsatisfied relationship if they feel they've invested too much to leave. Right? So everything that we're actually doing with the no contact rule creates a need or a urgent reason to want to invest. Now, I'll give you an example. Reactance, taking their behavioral freedoms away. That creates a need to invest, because guess what? I want that behavioral freedom back. That's a form of investment, trying to win the freedom back. Information gap theory, wanting to figure out why all of a sudden you went into this no contact rule, creates investment because they're thinking about you. Zeigarnik Effect. What happens next? Uncompleted task. I need to get a response. Why won't you respond to me? They're investing. Unpredictability. Creating more of a potentially, most likely with the unpredictability, you're going to get them to think about you a lot more. And look at all these little subtle forms of investment that you're getting from them without really doing anything except ignoring them. Now, the cool part, and this is the last thing I'm going to say to you before we end this video, the cool part about this is that the no contact rule is one of the most powerful strategies for getting your ex back, but you can't rely on it to fully get your ex back, right? The example I often use to my clients or give to my clients is the fact that when you're trying to get your ex back, look at it like you're building a puzzle. Now, what do puzzles do? The pieces fit together and form a picture. Right? The no contact rule is one big, large puzzle piece, but one big, large puzzle piece is not going to fit the entire picture. That's why you have to do all the other stuff. Now, of course, your next question is, Chris, how do I do all of that other stuff? What do I do after the no contact rule? Well, that's why I keep pushing you to take our quiz, because I will answer those questions for you once I have a little bit more knowledge on your situation. So, thank you so much for getting to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys tomorrow.